UUism and Mysticism today, and I didn't print out the reading. No, it's not a problem. I have it right here. Everything has a backup, a digital backup. But this is called The Meaning of Mysticism. And this is an excerpt from the men's lecture of 1957 by Jacob Trapp. So men's lecture are given to a minister that is considered theologically pushing the envelope of UUism. So it's sometimes annual, but not always. And it's probably stuff that a lot of laity don't pay any attention to, but it's a great honor to be chosen as a men's lecturer. Not me, but I've known several who have done. And they will do 4 or 5 different sermons on a specific topic and give it in different locations. Sometimes those are collected in books. So men's lecture is a big deal, kind of like a Berry Street essay, which you all may not know either, but happens annually at our UU ministers' gatherings. Men's lectures have a long history in our tradition that have influenced what's happening at the pulpit and also in our faith beyond. Now, Jacob Trapp was a minister for 25 years in one of our congregations in New Jersey, and I was a student minister there, and that's how I learned about him. He had already been gone for quite a while, but there were what they called Trappists, and these were people that really loved Reverend Jacob Trapp. He had a whole bunch of poetry that was self-published. There were all these little booklets. So Trapp was been one of my kind of influences early in my ministry formation. So, The Meaning of Mysticism by Jacob Trapp. I like to think of mysticism as the art of meeting reality, or the art of richer and deeper awarenesses. It is an experience that comes unbidden. It is a very special experience of that oneness, a rare and wonderful realization of what always is, but which we are seldom aware, that flooding in to overwhelm the illusion of aloneness. I'll repeat that part. The overwhelm of the illusion of aloneness. There are moments when life seems vivid and resplendent, when more than a moral splendor breaks in, when there is a touch of grandeur and of glory in just being alive. In our experience of those moments when we're rapturously one of the wonder of it all, we have an indication of what has been meant by the mystic experience. So, this topic of mysticism, it's not an easy one to discuss among us UUs. A little on the tricky side. And I think that there are 2 reasons for this difficulty. One reason is that we UUs were rationalists, right? We're logical, we're science-oriented. mystical experiences occur outside of that realm. They can't be proven. They are considered an experience of a single individual, and it's hard for us to believe that they're real. You know, it's easiest for us to consider them to be hocus pocus or maybe even insanity, some version of it. It's okay to giggle, you know. This is kind of a tense subject, so it's just fine to kind of giggle when it gets that way, right? So that leads me right to the second reason. We are a culture that believes that mystical experiences like hearing voices or seeing visions or having hunches or having that feeling is a sign of a person's mental instability. Yeah, if we have a vision or hear a voice, we sure as heck ain't gonna tell anybody about it. Sorry, that hillbilly background of mine showed up. So we know that they will think we are crazy or on drugs or hallucinating. Yeah, that's inappropriate terms, but y'all get the picture. So this notion that you're crazy if you see visions and hear voices, it's been studied. Research from the Southern Virginia Mental Health Institute has shown that voices and visions of psychotics are similar to those of religious contemplatives. Now, the difference between the two groups is that the psychotics are more narcissistic and they need to control their environment. And the psychotics had marked differences, personal structure and maturity. Now, the contemplatives, they were similar to the control group in their personality and maturity. Yeah, so there's the contemplatives, the psychotics, and a control group. All right? So the study didn't say what it takes to have a mystical experience, but it did conclude that not all mystics are crazy, and that there are experiences from religious contemplatives and activities that occur with the mentally healthy. Okay, so today I'm going to take us further into this discussion about mysticism and the UU faith. So what I know we all need is a definition of mysticism, right? Because we all love definitions. That's part of our rational science orientation. So I'm going to take us back to Henry Nelson Wyman. He was a process theologian who later became a Unitarian, and he wrote in the late 1920s, so this has been around a while, about mysticism in a book, Religious Experience of Daily Living. It's a great book, but hard to find because it was late 20s, 100 years ago, right? So he listed 11 types of mystical experiences, which and for Wyman, there was a wide range of experiences which he recognized as mystical, but only two that he considered valuable. He did not believe that visions or voices were of value, and he thought that they were possibly destructive. His view of a type of mystical experience was when one had the sense of well-being, a sense of flood of grace or of peace. Now that starts to sound very similar to the flooding and glory of being alive that I just read from Trapp. And it's possible that Trapp had read some Wyman. I don't know whether he did or he didn't. We do influence each other, though. Another valuable experience from Wyman is the aha. This aha is a solution to a difficult problem or creative insight that could not be arrived from just looking at things logically. Aha. Now, these two types of experiences would move a person to another place, according to Wyman. Both the experiences were stimulus for growth, of expanding personality, and of transformation. Growth wasn't a requirement for Trapp. He just needed us to feel the one with the wonder of it all. God, that sounds so cool, right? Wyman and Trapp didn't agree on the exact definition of mysticism, and it's not a surprise. And over 100 years, you would think it would evolve some anyway. Now, some of you, if you want to explore further, may be interested in this little booklet. I don't know how the video goes, but it's called Free Thinking Mystics with Hands, Exploring the Heart of Unitarian Universalism. And this is by Tom Owens Toll, and he references Trapp and a few others. I'm cleaning out, this side comment, I am cleaning out my bookcases. I am gifting this book to you. So, in addition to logic and rationalization informing our faith, we also believe that our experience informs us. Now let's look at some personal experiences and see what we might conclude from them about mysticism and our faith. And by personal, I mean single individual. Now, this is an example about a mother's intuition. It's a true story and was in the news reports 20 years ago. It was a dimple on a child's cheek that made the woman draw her breath. Luceta Cuevas was watching the face of a girl playing at a birthday party when something just clicked. The girl could be none other than her daughter, the baby she was told had died 6 years previously. Calling her over, Cuevas told the little girl that she had bubble gum stuck in her hair and she was going to fix it. So she quickly pulled out 5 strands of the little girl's hair, placed it in that, you all get where this is going, right? Placed it in a napkin and put it in a plastic bag. Tests proved that her instinct was right. This little girl was, in fact, Delamar, her daughter. And just as this 31-year-old had always suspected, the baby, oh, it's going to make me cry today, the baby who was supposed to have died in a fire at the age of 10 days had been alive this entire time. Cuevas had said that she never believed the firefighters when they told her that her daughter had perished in the fire. They said the baby's body had been so consumed by the flames that they found no remains. But this mother remained suspicious that this hysterical mother screamed at the firefighters that she thought her baby had been stolen, but she was told, oh, maybe it's your nerves. Now, a death certificate was never issued because a body was never found, and Cuevas says she wanted the matter investigated by the police at the time, but on learning what lawyers would cost, she realized that she could not afford to pursue the matter. Despite all that, Cuevas had always held on to the feeling that her daughter had not died. Now that's the end of the quote of the news report. So this is clearly an example, I think, of mother's intuition as a mystical experience. Now, but not all people believe it's mystical. T. Barry Brazelton, he's that famous Harvard pediatrician. He was like the Dr. Spock for my kids, so that kind of puts you in that generation. He would say this is not a mystical experience. He believes that mothers have a heightened sense of observation, not unlike animals, with a great sense of sight and smell. And this keen sense cannot be measured, but it can be trusted, and it should be trusted because it exists. Now, was this mother crazy? No, because the scientific DNA analysis proved her intuition was correct. But what if this had happened before DNA or DNA testing? Would she have been considered crazy then? And the firefighters sure did think that she was not normal. Now, this example doesn't meet the criteria of growing and expanding the individual as stated by Weinman. From the quotes of the article, it does not seem like Cuevas was feeling at one with the wonder of it all. Yet there is something about this experience that is magical and a wonder. Is mother's intuition a gift from the divine? I think that all human abilities are gifts, and a mother's intuition is just one of them. And we should celebrate it, be thankful for it, no matter what we label it. All right, let's move on to another example. By some, George de Benneville is considered the father of American Universalism. Y'all in the Philly area, who has heard of George de Benneville? Okay, couple of you. All right, so let's go over it. It goes back a couple hundred more years. He was born in 1703 in France, and due to religious persecution, his father moved his family to England after the invitation of William III. Now, most of this information comes from de Benneville's autobiography, if you're curious. So his mother had, oh, get this, 9 children in 5. And she died in childbirth of her youngest son, George. So George was actually raised by Queen Anne, and he attended the finest schools, and he was in the Royal Navy. And while in Tangiers, he had this profound experience. He saw 2 Moors, Muslims, caring for one another that had a badly injured leg. So 2 caring for a third with a badly injured leg. In that moment, he realized that there was no predestination and only universal salvation. So I'm talking universalist history here. He told everyone his good news and moved to France to preach it at the age of 17. Oh man, don't we love our teens? But the French, they were very suspicious, and they demanded a confession of faith. Just as he was kneeling down in front of the executioner, a courier came with his reprieve. He was finally released due to the intercession of the Queen, and he moved to Germany. He preached in Germany for many years this universalist faith. He worried so about the salvation of people that he actually, as he stated, developed a fever and became gravely ill, just so worried. And he fell into a coma for hours and was assumed dead. Now, remember, this is the 18th century medical environment, okay? So, quote, exactly at midnight, my soul was separated from my body, and I saw the people occupied in washing it according to the custom of the country, unquote. De Benneville was in a coma for 42 hours, and he had extraordinary visions. A messenger clad in robes whiter than snow told him, proclaim and publish to the people of the world a universal gospel that shall restore in time all human species without exception to honor and glory of the most holy. After his visions and miraculous recovery, he believed that his God had called to him to preach the gospel of universalism in America. He arrived in America 25 years before John Murray. Who's heard of John Murray? Okay, a few more of you, right? He's just whatever that way, whatever New Jersey way is, right? He's just got a head, right? De Benneville was here 25 years, and he would ride on horseback in all the geographic area. De Benneville came with the Germans into the Philadelphia area. So it's hard to believe that part of our universalist heritage is based on visions from a man in a coma. Right? Think about that. Yeah, you hadn't heard that story, had you? To Weinman, now we're going back to do some comparison. To Weinman, these visions are no different than those of Joan of Arc and are of possible destruction or destructive value. That's where Weinman would put it. Now, Trapp, he believed that this experience of wonder and oneness, that's mystical. Now, what do you think? Don't have to answer right now. But here's a mystic that has a vision and preaches a new religion. And we follow that religion still today. It's a bit shocking when I first read it in De Benneville's autobiography. And this is part of our Unitarian Universalist history. We don't talk about it. Okay. My last example is a personal one. There was a time in my life when I was struggling, and this goes back a few decades, but when I was struggling on whether to stay in a relationship or get out. I was frustrated and distraught for days. I couldn't figure out a solution, a logical conclusion. So one afternoon, I was listening to music with my headphones, and I was in a slight meditative state. I heard a voice loud and clear, "Get out." Now, I bolted up upright and was in this like immediate wide awake awareness. For hours and hours, I tried to ignore this experience, telling myself that it wasn't logical, not logical. But I knew deep in my soul that I had been told the right thing, the decision that I eventually made. At that time, I was no longer conflicted, and I was certain that this was the advice I needed to act upon. I have never regretted that decision. That voice led me ultimately to being here with you, because I would have never had a ministry path if I hadn't followed the get out advice. So Lyman would say that the voice was a mystical experience, but it was of no value. He would also say that my experience could be a realization of a solution to a problem, the knowing that couldn't be deduced from logic, and that would be considered by him maybe as a valuable experience. For me, it doesn't matter how we characterize it. That experience and others similar to it have been a source of guidance for me. I do not know where they come from, and I do not really care. Those occasional voices and visions, they've been a source of information to me that have helped me live my life. So I'm not going to give you today answers about mystical experiences. I gave you kind of an overview of what UUs are talking about and how maybe we could talk about it more. I brought more books, and I heard that a little group had actually even read some or learned some about Ken Patton, very influential. This is Man's Hidden Search, an inquiry to naturalistic mysticism. This is clearly out of print and not digitized. And then another book by Patton, so if you want to get Pattonated, The Sense of Life, the Meaning and Mysticism of Natural Religion. There was quite the, I guess you could call it a feud about the theology that Patton was writing about and preaching about versus more traditional UU ideas at the time. So he was pushing thought. And then I have a small self-published book of his poetry, Mine to Give. And as I'm cleaning out a lot of stuff, this I am leaving for you all also. So, Trapp has a poem that I think, and the Trapp poems, those poetries, those are little tiny books, and they haven't come up out of the boxes yet, so. But you could call the Beacon Church in Summit, New Jersey, and see if there are any more left, if you're interested in some Trapp books. Anyway, here's a poem of his, because for his retirement and even before then, he wrote a lot of poetry. For days and nights I couldn't sleep nor eat as I pondered and worried about the decision that I needed to make. I was in the world between worlds and needed to move to a place of decision and peace. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was waiting to hear the words, the song, my song. And after I heard the words, I could sing my song. Don't you just love poets? Oh, the use of metaphor is so fabulous. So mystical experiences can be a source for our inspiration so we can sing our song. De Benneville's song was to preach universalism in America. Cueva's song was one of motherhood for a child that she knew was still alive. Jacob Trapp's song was that of a poet and has inspired many of us, and I hope still inspires us. Let's not lose some of these great thinkers and poets and that are in our tradition. So I've got these closing words for this sermon from John Burens. He's a former UUA president. It's been a while, so some of you may not have heard from him. But he wrote this about Trapp. Poets, as Jake demonstrates, have been another source of renewal for the human spirit because they, like mystics, break open form and tradition and language and help us return to the freshness of original experience. So may we all be poets. May we all be mystics. May we all be singing our song and live in the freshness of original experience.